Good morning and welcome to this year's Emissions Reduction Incentive Grants, or ERIG program webinar. My name is Dawn Blosch and I am the program coordinator. I will cover the beginning of the presentation and my colleague Michaela Thornton will cover the application walkthrough after I'm done. Today I will present a high-level overview of the ERIG program. You can get more details by referring to the Request for Grant Applications, or RFGA, found on the program's website. The presentation and sample application walkthrough will be recorded, and this recording will be posted on the agency's YouTube channel. The link to this recording will also be posted on the ERIG webpage when the program opens. The question and answer portion of this webinar will not be recorded. For this presentation, your microphones, cameras, and the chat will be disabled. At the end of the presentation and sample application walkthrough, we will have time for questions. During the question period, your microphone will be enabled and you can use the raise hand function in Teams. We will call on you by name to unmute you so that you may ask your question. If possible, please write down the slide number or title to which your question refers. We will do our best to answer any questions that you may have at the end of our webinar presentation. The ERIG program provides financial incentives to repower or replace older non-road equipment, stationary equipment, locomotives, and marine vessels in order to reduce nitrogen oxide emissions in non-attainment areas in affected counties in Texas. For our agenda today, we will begin with program highlights and go over program requirements. Next, we will touch on grant amounts and eligible expenses and the basic grant process. This includes reimbursement, disposition, usage, and reporting. We will then walk through a sample application before having time for questions at the end. Both rebate and ERIG will be open at the same time. These are separate programs with separate applications and requirements. It is important to confirm that you are applying for the correct program for your equipment type. Applications submitted under the wrong program will not be eligible. There is no overlap of eligible equipment between ERIG and rebate. Rebate has a list of eligible equipment on their website, and ERIG covers most of the non-road equipment not eligible in rebate. The rebate grant webpage is a great place to start if you have non-road equipment. This will help you select the appropriate program. The QR code shown here will take you to the rebate grants webpage where you can check your equipment type. Also, please keep in mind that rebate is a first-come, first-served program. This means applications will be ranked for eligibility in the order they are received. Funding will be issued until all funding is exhausted. If your equipment is eligible, but funding has run out, you will not receive a grant. So it is time sensitive to get your rebate application submitted as soon as possible to hold your place in line. On the other hand, ERIG is a competitive grant. You will compete against all the other applicants. At the very end of the grant round, applications will be scored and ranked based on NOx reductions. So, is ERIG the right program for you? It is important to apply for the correct grant program if you have non-road equipment. Not all non-road equipment qualifies for the ERIG program. If your equipment is listed here on this slide, it is not eligible for the ERIG program. Again, equipment listed here is not eligible for this ERIG program. These equipment types are eligible under rebate. I'll pause for just a second so you can take a look at the equipment. ERIG has $62 million available in funding for a variety of equipment, including some non-road equipment, stationary equipment, locomotives, and marine vessels. ERIG is a competitive program where we compare applications against one another and score them for selection after the closing date. Scoring criteria is based on how effective the project would be for reducing NOx emissions. There will be about a 4-month window to submit your applications. Infrastructure projects are allowed under ERIG with certain limitations. At least 55% of annual operation for all ERIG equipment must occur in the eligible areas outlined in the map that is included in the request for grant applications. We'll take a look at the map in a moment. Eligible applicants include individuals, state and local governments, corporations, or other legal entities. All business entities, such as corporations or partnerships, must have an active registration with the Secretary of State by the program opening date. If awarded a contract, businesses must maintain an active registration throughout the contract period. Any apparent, potential, or actual conflicts of interest to TCEQ must be disclosed in writing at the time an application is submitted. Shown here is a map of the eligible counties and areas for this program. You can view this map in the request for grant applications. Remember, at least 55% of the annual operation for all ERIG equipment must occur in these areas. Shown on this slide are the only eligible project categories for ERIG. Included are the replacement or repower of select non-road equipment. As previously mentioned, not all non-road equipment is eligible under this program. If the equipment type is on the rebate list, it is not eligible for ERIG. The replacement or repower of stationary equipment, marine vessels, and locomotives is eligible. Lastly, applicants have the option to add on refueling infrastructure to a replacement or repower project if the new equipment is powered by an alternative fuel. Refueling infrastructure is not a standalone project category type. It must be an addition to one of the categories mentioned here. Now, let's discuss equipment requirements for ERIG. We'll start with non-road and stationary equipment. Remember, non-road equipment eligible in rebate will not be eligible for ERIG. It is important to verify your specific kind of non-road equipment is covered in rebate or ERIG before you start the application process. This is time sensitive since rebate is first come, first served. Your current non-road or stationary equipment being replaced or repowered must be powered by an engine, turbine, or other internal combustion device that is 25 horsepower or greater. The equipment must be owned by the applicant at the time of application and have been continuously owned by the applicant for the 2 years immediately preceding the application date. Please note that ownership by an affiliate or subsidiary would not meet this requirement. If this is the case, you will need to apply for a waiver. The equipment must be used in its primary function in Texas for at least 2 years prior to the application signature date. And the equipment must currently be in operating condition with at least 5 years of useful life remaining. For replacement projects of non-road or stationary equipment, the new engine on the replacement equipment must be certified or verified to the United States Environmental Protection Agency or EPA emissions standards for non-road engines, or be authorized by an applicable rule or air permit. The new engine must be certified to emit at least 25% less NOx than the old engine being replaced. The new equipment must not have an engine manufacture year that is more than 3 years older than the calendar year in which it was purchased. For example, if you buy the new equipment in 2026, the engine must not be older than 2023. The old and new equipment must be the same type of equipment and used in the same way. Non-road or stationary equipment repower projects must include the replacement of an existing engine with a new, used, rebuilt, or remanufactured engine. The existing engine may also be replaced by electric motors, drives, or fuel cells. The retrofit or add-on emissions reduction technology of an existing engine also qualifies as a repower project. The upgrade of an existing engine with an emissions upgrade kit would also qualify as a repower project. That upgrade kit must be certified by the EPA or the California Air Resource Board, or CARB. The replaced engine must be certified or verified to the EPA emission standards for non-road engines, or be authorized by an applicable rule or air permit. The replacement engine or upgrade kit must be certified to emit at least 25% less NOx than the old engine. The retrofit or add-on emissions reduction technology must be verified to emit at least 25% less NOx than the engine prior to the retrofit or add-on. Rebuilt or remanufactured engines must only use components from the original engine manufacturer, or OEM, to be purchased and be purchased from the OEM or an authorized reseller. New, rebuilt, or remanufactured engines must not have an engine manufacture year that is more than 3 years older than the calendar year in which it was purchased. We are now moving on to projects involving marine vessels. If you have a marine vessel, these next few slides are for you. The old vessel being replaced or repowered must be powered by at least one propulsion engine that is subject to EPA emission standards for marine vessels. Marine vessels certified to EPA recreational marine vessel standards or otherwise used for sport purposes are not eligible. Only propulsion or auxiliary engines that are 25 horsepower or greater will be considered in calculating emissions reductions. The vessel must also be currently owned by the applicant and must have been continuously owned by the applicant for at least the 2 years immediately preceding the application signature date. Once again, ownership by an affiliate or subsidiary doesn't meet this requirement. The vessel must currently be used in its primary function in the routine operations of the applicant in the state of Texas and have been used for the 2 years immediately preceding the application signature date. It must be in operating condition with at least 5 years of useful life remaining. And finally, it must be registered in the applicant's name for operation in Texas and have United States Coast Guard registration in the applicant's name. For marine replacement projects, The combined NOx emissions of the engines on the replacement vessel must be certified to emit at least 25% less than the combined NOx emissions of the engines on the vessel being replaced. The certification must come from EPA, CARB, or another entity that TCEQ deems acceptable. Engines in the replacement vessel must not have an engine manufacture year that is more than 3 years older than the calendar year in which it was purchased. For example, if you buy the new vessel in 2027, all engines must be 2024 or newer. The new vessel must be the same type and used in the same way as the old vessel. Now we'll talk about marine repower projects. Those projects include the replacement of an existing engine with a new, used, rebuilt, or remanufactured engine. The existing engine may also be replaced by electric motors, drives, or fuel cells. The retrofit or add-on emissions reduction technology of an existing engine also qualifies as a repower project. The upgrade of an existing engine with an emissions upgrade kit would also qualify as a repower project. That upgrade kit must be certified by the EPA or CARB. A marine engine low NOx rebuild kit that results in a new engine family code or test group number also qualifies. It must also result in a new emissions information label being affixed to the rebuilt engine. Excuse me. The replacement engine or upgrade kit must be certified to emit at least 25% less NOx than the old engine. The retrofit or add-on emissions technology must also be verified to emit at least 25% less NOx than the engine prior to the retrofit or add-on. Rebuilt or remanufactured engines must only use components from the OEM and be purchased from the OEM or an authorized reseller. Okay, we have discussed non-road and stationary equipment and marine vessels. Now, let's discuss locomotive projects. For the purposes of this grant program, locomotives include line haul or switcher locomotives that are subject to EPA emissions standards for locomotives. The old locomotives to be replaced or repowered must be currently owned by the applicant and must have been continuously owned by the applicant for at least the 2 years immediately preceding the application signature date. Again, ownership by an affiliate or subsidiary does not meet this requirement. The locomotive must currently be used in its primary function in the routine operations of the applicant in the state of Texas and have been used for the 2 years immediately preceding the application signature date. Finally, it must be in operating condition with at least 5 years of useful life remaining. We consider locomotive replacement projects as 1. Complete replacement of a locomotive with a new or newer locomotive, or 2. Replacement of the locomotive's engine while maintaining the frame rails and wheels of the original locomotive. The engine on the new locomotive must be certified to emit at least 25% less NOx as compared with the engine being replaced. The certification must come from EPA, CARB, or another entity TCEQ deems acceptable. The new locomotive's engines must have an engine manufacture year that is no more than 3 years older than the calendar year in which it was purchased. For example, if you buy the new locomotive in 2028, the engines must not be older than 2025. The new locomotive must be the same type and used in the same way as the old locomotive. TCEQ may consider, on a case-by-case basis, the replacement of a locomotive over 1005 horsepower with a locomotive 1005 horsepower or less. Locomotive repower projects include the replacement of an existing engine with a new, used, rebuilt, or remanufactured engine. The existing engine may also be replaced by electric motors, drives, or fuel cells. For this project type, we are only talking about the replacement of the engine and all necessary associated drivetrain components. The retrofit or add-on emissions reduction technology of an existing engine also qualifies as a repower project. The upgrade of an existing engine with an emissions upgrade kit would also qualify as a repower project. That upgrade kit must be certified by the EPA or CARB. The replaced engine or upgrade kit must be certified to emit at least 25% less NOx than the old engine. Similarly, the retrofit or add-on emissions reduction technology must be verified to emit at least 25% less NOx than the engine prior to the retrofit or add-on. Rebuilt or remanufactured engines must use only components from the OEM and be purchased from the OEM or an authorized reseller. Now we'll talk about refueling infrastructure. Additional funding is available for on-site refueling infrastructure. This is not available as a standalone project type. You must be replacing or repowering non-road or stationary equipment, marine vessels, or locomotives to include refueling infrastructure in your project. At a minimum, the refueling infrastructure must provide refueling capacity for the grant equipment. That grant equipment must be powered by an alternative fuel, and the refueling infrastructure must provide that alternative fuel. Eligible fuel types are listed here. Diesel is not an eligible fuel type. Refueling infrastructure projects include the installation of new service as well as the expansion of existing on-site refueling infrastructure. Applicants are required to be the owner of the refueling infrastructure equipment, but they do not have to own the site if they have been given permission to install and operate the grant-funded equipment at the site for the duration of the contract period. Leased fueling infrastructure equipment is not eligible. The refueling infrastructure must be installed in a non-attainment or affected county. Applicants may only include one refueling infrastructure project site and one type of alternative fuel per application. Operation and annual usage rates are the last program requirements we will cover. If awarded a grant, at least 55% of the grant-funded equipment's operation must occur in one or more of the non-attainment areas in affected counties. You can commit to up to 95% of operation in these areas. A higher percent of operation commitment may increase your project's competitiveness. But please note, percent of operation is a binding commitment in any grant award, and TCEQ may require the return of grant funds if your actual percentage of total usage in the non-attainment areas and affected counties drops below your percentage of total usage commitment in your contract. TCEQ uses annual usage rates to calculate emissions reductions. These rates depend on the equipment type and may be measured in hours or fuel use. The annual usage rate will be applied throughout the grant activity life. Under standard usage, applicants will enter the default usage rate established by TCEQ for the particular type of equipment. This can be found in the technical supplement. The default usage rate will be used for our emissions calculations. The applicant must commit to using the grant equipment in the eligible counties for the required percentage of annual use, but the applicant won't be required to use the grant equipment for the exact number of annual hours or fuel use that is listed as the default usage rate. Under non-standard usage, a usage rate is proposed by the applicant. Not all types of equipment have a default usage rate listed in the technical supplement. If this is the case, you will need to choose non-standard usage. If there is a default usage rate listed for your equipment, but you feel it is too low based on your historical annual usage, you can also choose non-standard usage. You must submit supporting documentation if you choose non-standard usage. Locomotive projects are not eligible for non-standard usage. Okay, that was a lot, but now let's talk about money and the maximum grant amounts. As I mentioned before, $62 million is available for this grant round. ERIG offers up to 80% of the incremental cost, not to exceed a set project cost per ton or CPT of NOx reduced. We'll cover how to calculate incremental costs in the next slides. For non-road and stationary projects, the cost per ton limit is $35,000. The cost per ton limit for marine and locomotive projects is $20,000. Grantees will receive the lesser of either 1. The grant amount requested in the application, 2. The grant amount at the cost per ton limit, or 3. 80% of the incremental cost. Projects with refueling infrastructure have the same overall cost per ton limit as the replacement or repower project types. Grantees will receive the lesser of either 1. The grant amount requested in the application, 2. The grant amount at the cost per ton limit, or 3. 50% of the incremental costs. The previous slide talked about incremental costs. Here is the formula we use to calculate incremental costs. We start by adding up all eligible costs related to the purchase and installation of the grant equipment. Costs must be paid after the program opening date to be considered eligible. A full list of eligible costs can be found in the request for grant applications, which will be posted to the ERIG webpage when the program opens. Once we have the total of all eligible costs, we deduct the value of any financial incentives that reduce the cost of the project. This includes tax credits or deductions, other grants, and any other public financial assistance received. Finally, we deduct scrap value. For non-road projects, TCEQ uses a default scrap value of $1,000 for replacement projects and $250 for repower projects. Applicants must provide documentation of the scrap value of the replaced stationary equipment, marine vessel, or locomotive. The same goes for repower projects for stationary equipment, excuse me. Let me repeat that. The same goes for repower projects for stationary equipment, marine vessels, and locomotives. You will need to provide documentation of the scrap value of the engine when you submit your application. We will use $0 as the scrap value for refueling infrastructure since there is no equipment or engine to be destroyed. Ineligible costs. Ineligible costs will not be included in calculating your incremental cost. Costs that are considered ineligible include costs paid prior to the program opening date, insurance premiums, any fees related to the borrowing of money such as finance fees and charges, salaries and travel expenses for employees of the grantee, expenses of any lobbyist in the state of Texas, costs associated with the preparation and submission of the application, administrative costs of the grantee, food and drink, and costs that do not involve an arm's length transaction. This includes the use of existing inventory without a proof of purchase, equipment that is manufactured by the grantee, and transactions between affiliated companies. Applications must be received no later than 5 p.m. Central Time on the program closing date listed on the cover page of the request for grant applications. Applications will only be accepted through the TERP online portal we refer to as SUNS. There will be no exceptions. All attachments will be submitted through the SUNS portal as well. Photos of equipment and engines must have the activity number clearly labeled at the top of each page. Only 10 grant activities may be included in a single application. If you have more than 10 activities, please submit additional applications. An activity is not eligible if it is currently required by any state or federal law, rule, regulation, memorandum of agreement, or other legally binding document. The SUNS portal will not allow you to submit an incomplete application. You will need to attach all required items, including a W-9 form with the applicant's legal name, EIN, or Social Security number, depending on your application type. Please include the EIN of the entity applying, even if it is a disregarded entity. If you are applying as an individual or a sole proprietor, an unexpired state-issued photo ID is required. Photos of your equipment are required, including the front, rear, right side, and left side views, along with the engine area and the engine data plate. All photos must be in color, and engine data plates must be legible. This means you may need to get very close to the engine plate to get a good picture. Proof of ownership documentation is required. Proof of registration is required for marine vessels. Depending on what type of application you are submitting, you may need to submit 1. A site plan and property rights if you are applying with a refueling infrastructure project, and 2, any supplemental forms applicable to your project. This includes waiver requests, applying for non-standard usage, and the property ownership form if you do not own the land where the refueling infrastructure will be installed. My colleague will present a sample application shortly. Eligible projects will be scored, ranked, and selected competitively based on the following scoring criteria. First, we have costs per ton of NOx projected to be reduced. Projects with the lowest cost per ton of NOx reduced as compared to all other projects will receive the most points. Secondly, total projected NOx reductions. Projects with the highest projected NOx reductions as compared to all other projects will receive the most points. After taking both criteria into consideration, we will compile the scores, rank the applications in order from highest score to lowest, and determine grant funding amounts based on available program funding. Additional considerations can be found in the request for grant applications. Successful applicants will be notified of their selection and the amount of grant funds they may be awarded. Applicants selected to receive grant funding will be required to sign a contract with TCEQ. The approved activities outlined in the application will be represented in the contract's scope of work. Grant recipients commit to taking all actions necessary to ensure the successful completion of their project within the contract's timeframes and funding limitations. Okay, on to reimbursement. All grants are paid on a reimbursement basis. Grant funds will not be dispersed without a request for reimbursement or RFR. Grant equipment must have been paid for, taken possession of, and placed into operation before an RFR can be submitted. Be sure to review the reimbursement deadline listed in the contract. RFRs must be received by this date. Your RFR will include 1. The RFR form, which can be found online at terpgrants.org, and 2. Documentation demonstrating the grant equipment has been received and costs have been paid in full by the grantee. The name on the purchase documents and proof of payment must match the name on the contract. Please keep this in mind while you're shopping if you have multiple companies. If the grant equipment was financed, the reimbursement will be sent to the financing company. Otherwise, the check will go to the grantee. If the grant equipment is leased, the lease must include the following. 1. A term sufficient to extend to the end of the activity life, or 2. A binding commitment from the grantee to purchase the equipment at the end of the term. Disposition is a major component of this grant program. This is what ensures we are getting emissions reductions. If awarded a grant, within 90 days of reimbursement payment, the grantee must dispose of the equipment and engines being replaced or repowered by complete destruction or otherwise rendering the equipment permanently inoperable. You can use standard disposition, which requires 1. Making a 3-inch or larger diameter hole on both sides of the engine block and cutting both frame rails, or 2. Completely crushing the equipment, including the engine. The structural damage to the equipment must be such that repairs are not possible. You can also select alternative disposition. TCEQ may consider alternative methods of rendering the equipment and engines permanently inoperable in lieu of the standard disposition method. If the alternate method is not approved, you must follow standard disposition. For locomotive projects, permanent removal from the state of Texas may be considered instead of the standard method of disposition. The destruction of the equipment and engines being replaced must be documented on TCEQ's disposition form with supporting documentation. Supporting documentation includes before and after photos of the equipment being destroyed or rendered permanently inoperable. Failure to complete disposition and submit the required documentation to TCEQ within 90 days of payment being issued will require the return of grant funds. The disposition requirement does not apply to refueling infrastructure. Annual usage and reporting is another key component of this grant program. By accepting a grant, you are agreeing to operate and monitor the use of the grant-funded equipment for the duration of the activity life. The activity life is the time period used to determine the emissions reductions for each activity. It does not begin until TCEQ approves disposition. Grantees are required to submit annual usage reports provided by TCEQ. These usage reports are used to ensure compliance with the annual usage requirements outlined in the contract's scope of work. Contractual obligations. During the activity life, a grantee must do a number of things, including own or lease the grant-funded equipment, operate the grant-funded equipment in Texas with at least 55% of the equipment's total annual operation in the eligible areas, maintain grant records for 4 years after the contract terminates, maintain the equipment to keep it in operating condition, maintain insurance on the equipment, and more. A full list of requirements can be found in the request for grant applications. Failure to meet the requirements and obligations of the contract may result in termination of the contract and the return of all or a prorated share of the grant funds. This ends the program overview session of the webinar. I will now turn it over to Michaela for the application walkthrough. We will open the floor for questions after Michaela presents an overview of the SUNS online application.
Good morning. My name is Michaela Thornton, and I will provide you with a walkthrough of the SUNS online application for eRig. This will be the only way to apply for eRig. We will not be using downloadable PDF applications. The slides are pretty self-explanatory, but we think it will be helpful for you to see what the online application looks like. If you have any questions, please write down the slide number, and we'll take your questions at the end of the presentation. When the program opens, the TERP Online SUNS link will be posted on our eRig program webpage, along with a link for a step-by-step guide on how to submit your application and documentation. Final reminder, if your non-road equipment is on this list, you need to apply under rebate. Now let's walk through the application. The welcome screen shown here will ask you for your name and email address. Use the email address where you want to receive confirmation that your application was submitted. An important note, which does not apply to applications prepared by a third-party preparer. This applies for people completing an application for an authorized official. When an application is ready for the authorized official to review and sign, you will need to use your login credentials so the authorized official can sign it. For example, let's say you are an authorized official and you need an executive assistant to fill out an application. The executive assistant would enter their information onto this screen. When the application is ready for the authorized official to sign, the authorized official will use the executive assistant's credentials to log in and sign the application. Next, select the last item on the list titled Texas Emissions Reduction Plan. Then click on New TERP Activity. Be sure to select the eRig application and click Next. You will be asked to create a password. It is very important to note that we are unable to recover or reset your password if you forget it, and you will need to start over and create an entirely new application if you forget your password. Do not forget your password. If a third party is preparing your application, you will need to get this password from them. There's only one password per application for both the applicant and the third party preparer. After you create your password, a reference number will be assigned. You can make note of it, but it will also be in the confirmation email you receive when your application is successfully submitted. Click the Next button to start filling out the application. Before we start, let's discuss what happens when you click on the Activities button. This is called the Activities page, where you can see all the applications that are in progress and the applications that are ready to be signed. When you come to this screen and need to go back into an application to complete it, you will click the Edit button. You will then be prompted to enter the password for that application. When moving through the online application, you will see yellow warning messages if something could be wrong. This is your indicator to double check what you entered. If you believe the information is correct, you can proceed. Red error messages indicate something is incorrect or incomplete. You will need to correct your entry. Red asterisks are shown next to mandatory questions. The system will not allow you to proceed without answering those questions. The online application has a very helpful navigation menu. Please note that all sections must be completed in the order shown. You cannot skip around. The application will automatically take you to the next section after the current section is fully complete. Completed sections will be marked as done. Incomplete sections will be marked as to do. You are allowed to exit the application and return later to complete your to-do list. Please be sure to save your application if you need to step away. The application will automatically time out after 20 minutes of inactivity, and you will lose any progress on your current section if it is incomplete. As you move through the application, additional sections may appear in the navigation pane depending on the answers you provide along the way. Eligibility criteria will be completed here. This example shows the questions asked if applying with a non-road piece of equipment. Note that the other equipment types will have other eligibility questions. This slide shows where you will begin adding applicant information. Please note that only certain applicant types will require Social Security numbers, filing or charter numbers, and employer ID numbers. More applicant information will be entered here. If you select the option that says one or more individuals own 25% or more of the business entity, you will need to provide those individuals' names and social security numbers. If you have a third party preparing the application for submission, this third party preparer must select yes for this question. Later in the application, there will be a section for them to enter their contact information. I want to make sure I have everybody's attention now, especially third-party preparers. Third-party preparers will need to share the application's password with the authorized official. When it is time for the authorized official to review and sign the application, they will need this password. Third-party preparers should make a different password for each applicant they are assisting with. Note, when the authorized official needs to review and sign the application, they must log into SUNS using the name and email address that the third-party preparer entered into the application for the authorized official. The authorized official must type their name exactly as the third-party preparer entered it, even if it was entered incorrectly. The authorized official will have an opportunity to correct a misspelled name. You will continue to add general information here. For eRig, choose between replacement or repower. This slide shows where you will select the emission source, fuel type, and add a business description. Please note the emission source options are dependent on the equipment type you indicated in the eRig eligibility criteria section. For marine and locomotive projects, the correct options will automatically populate. If the operation of the grant-funded equipment will be the same for all activities, select yes for the question regarding the percent of annual operation. Select your eligible areas and enter the percentage of time the grant-funded equipment will be in those areas. Note that if activities have different usage percentages or different counties, you will select no for the question regarding the percent of annual operation. Later in the application, you will be prompted to fill this section out for each activity. You will use this map to select your eligible areas. Note that 55% of the annual usage on this grant-funded equipment must occur in the highlighted counties known as eligible counties. Regarding the other eligible area, this area only includes 6 counties: Anderson, Freestone, Howard, Hutchinson, Navarro, and Titus counties. If you will operate the grant-funded equipment in one or more of these counties, select Other and then enter the percentage of operation in those counties. Of these 6 counties that make up this area, select the county in which this grant-funded equipment will be primarily used. For example, if you will operate the grant-funded equipment in both Anderson and Freestone counties, but the equipment will primarily be used in Anderson, select Anderson from the drop-down list. This slide shows where the applicant will indicate whether the application will include refueling infrastructure by selecting yes or no from the dropdown. As a reminder, to be eligible for grant funding for refueling infrastructure, your application must include one or more activities where your vehicles or equipment are switching from diesel to an alternative fuel like compressed natural gas. Once you get to the eRig Equipment and Activity Certification section, you will find some guidance statements and useful links, along with a series of certifications that you must agree to before moving forward with the application. The next section is a list of administrative and state contracting certifications. Select Agree to certify that you understand and will comply with the listed statements. Note that the screenshot here is just an example of the first few and not the comprehensive list of certifications. Here, you will indicate whether the applicant has any connection with an executive of TCEQ or any other state agency, or whether they employed or used the services of an executive of TCEQ or any other state agency. This next section, called E-RIG Program Certifications, has additional specific certifications that applicants must read and agree to. The next section is for contact information for the authorized official. I want to mention this again regarding third-party preparers. After the third-party preparer completes the application and signs it, the authorized official will log into SUNS using the exact first name, last name, and email address that the third-party preparer entered into this section. Once in SUNS, the authorized official should see the application. They will then need to enter the password for that application to review and sign the application. Third-party preparers make sure to use a unique password for each application. Information for the designated project representative or DPR will be entered here. If the DPR is the same person as the authorized official, you can use the copy feature. Note that you will need to re-enter the email address here if you copy over the AO contact information. If you selected yes to the question about the application being prepared by a third-party preparer, you will need to enter the appropriate contact information here. After all the contact information has been entered, you will arrive at this screen where you will begin to enter activity information. At the very top of the screen, you will see a box that will allow you to increase the total number of activities for your application up to 10. Before diving fully into this section, I suggest that you have all photos and documentation ready to upload before entering activity information. SUNS will not allow you to save a page without all the required fields being filled and will time you out after 20 minutes of inactivity. Once it times out, unsaved data will be lost. Please have your pictures and documents ready before starting this section. Information about your old equipment will be entered here. The following must be included: equipment type, equipment ID, equipment make, model, year, horsepower, engine make and model, engine ID or serial number, fuel type, engine family code, and federal NOx emissions rate. After you enter all of this information, you'll come to a few questions regarding the old equipment. Your answers to these questions will determine if you need to attach Supplemental Form 1, also known as the waiver form. Information about your new equipment will be entered here. The following must be included: equipment type, which will autofill to match the old equipment type you entered above, equipment model year, engine model year, engine horsepower, fuel type, and federal NOx emissions rate. This is where you will enter annual usage information. Your selections in this section will impact the competitiveness of your application. Select your annual usage type, either standard or non-standard usage. If you need more information about standard and non-standard usage, click on the question mark icon. Next, enter the annual usage rate found in the technical supplement. If you are opting for non-standard usage, this is where you will enter your historical usage for the 2 years immediately preceding the application signature date. Enter the annual usage unit and the project activity life. Enter your method of disposition and requested grant amount for the activity here. For help determining the requested grant amount, click on the question mark icon. I'm going to walk through determining the requested grant amount using the question mark icon, our eRig grant estimator, and the technical supplement. The question mark icon will have links to all the grant estimators for project types available in eRig. Select the project type you are applying with. In this demo, we will be using the non-road stationary grant estimator. The link will open up to the grant estimator. The grant estimator is used for estimating NOx reduction and seeing how competitive your application might be. In addition to the data we ask for in the application, you will need to pull up the eRig technical supplement linked here to find the engine load factor and the hours per year the equipment or engine is used. Enter the information for the old equipment. This should be the same information you entered in the application. In this example, we are looking to replace a 1999 300 horsepower diesel off-highway tractor with a new one. Use the eRig technical supplement to search up the load factor for your equipment. You'll search up your equipment type and then look for the load factor. You may need to scroll a bit to find it. For diesel off-highway tractors, the load factor is 0.59. This is the number you will put in the load factor box of the grant estimator. The family emission limit is optional. The calculator will use the standard emission rate if nothing is entered. Enter the information for the new equipment. This should also be the same information you entered in the application. Use the same load factor that you used for the old equipment. In this example, the load factor is 0.59. Enter the contract length from the dropdown. This is the number of years you will commit to operating the grant-funded equipment if awarded. A longer activity life will reduce your cost per ton. The term length you pick should match the project activity life section in the application. For this example, we are using 7 years. The hours used per year can be found in the technical supplement by searching up your equipment type. For diesel off-highway tractors, the annual hours is 858. This is the number that you will put in the hours used per year box. The percent of time in eligible areas should match what was entered in the application. If you are primarily located in El Paso, Howard, or Hutchinson counties, select the Yes bubble. Enter your requested grant amount. In eRig, there is a cost per ton limit for all project types. If your requested grant amount causes the cost per ton to be greater than that limit, a warning will appear at the top of the screen. We advise you to determine a requested grant amount that is below the limit so your application remains eligible. For non-road and stationary projects, the cost per ton limit is $35,000, so we will need to enter a different grant amount to get below that $35,000 cost per ton limit. Notice how the error message did not pop up and the cost per ton is less than $35,000. This means the requested grant amount is eligible. Once you have determined your requested grant amount, you will go back to the SUNS application and enter it into the grant amount box. I want to take a moment to point out the example we used is an off-highway tractor and not an agricultural tractor. Off-highway tractors are eligible under eRig, while ag tractors are not. If you have an ag tractor, you will need to apply for rebate. At the bottom of each activity section, you will need to upload color photos of the old equipment. Pro tip, have these pictures ready to go before starting the activity section. I strongly encourage you to review the photo submission guide that is linked on the screen so you can ensure all photos of the old equipment meet our requirements. Also, when attaching the photos, pay attention to which side of the equipment the prompt is asking for. You will also need to upload proof of ownership documentation in addition to the color photos. Refer to the language in blue here and to the RFGA for more information regarding acceptable proof of ownership documentation. After you have completed all of your activity sections, you must upload a completed, signed, and dated IRS Form W-9. If you are applying as an individual or sole proprietor, you will also need to upload a color photograph of your driver's license or other government-issued identification card. Note that for marine, locomotive, or stationary project types, or if your project type includes refueling infrastructure, there will be additional required attachments on this page. At the end of the application, there is a section for additional information. If needed, you may provide any additional relevant information for the project that was not already covered in the application. You can leave it blank if you have no additional information to share. Once your application is complete, you will electronically sign it. Select the application, click the Sign button, and enter your password. If you are a third-party preparer, this flowchart describes the process when submitting an application on behalf of your client. I'll pause for a few moments to allow y'all to take a picture. This section will appear if there is a third-party preparer. They should take the opportunity to save a copy of the application for their records. The third-party preparer will electronically sign off first by checkmarking the two certification statements. They will need to enter their name as it appears above, then click the Electronically Sign Your Application button. Do not forget to share the password with the authorized official. The authorized official will sign last. The authorized official may also view and print the copy of record, which is highly recommended. Apply check marks to the three certifications, enter your name exactly as it appears above, and click the Electronically Sign Your Application button. By clicking this button, the authorized official signs and also submits the application. After your application is submitted, you can view and print if you choose. After the authorized official signs the application, SUNS automatically sends this email that is shown on the slide. This email confirms submission of the application. Once TCEQ receives the application, another email is automatically sent confirming receipt. Please keep these emails to retain both the reference number and the confirmation number. It will also include a link to where you can view your submitted application. Applicants can retrieve an application submission later by logging into SUNS and selecting the Submission button. Follow the prompts and choose View COR from the drop-down list to access a downloadable version of the application. That's all for the application walkthrough. I encourage you to sign up for email updates by going to our webpage and clicking subscribe to our TERP Hot Topics email list.